Whenever you say election 2000, the word that first comes to your lips is Florida. We all know what happened there 2 years ago.
But do we really know what happened? While the media have acknowledged some of their mistakes,
no one who watched it or participated in it will ever forget election night 2000. We are projecting that when all the votes are counted, the state of Florida will go tonight to the Vice President, Mr. Gore. So we have a change in our call. Florida is now too close to call.
We don't just have egg in our face, we've got omelet all over our suits.
On a night when accuracy is crucial, the news media got it wrong.
Who caused the Florida mess in 2000? The media still blame Florida.
Florida's been a major embarrassment across the country for the past 2 years.
And Florida's voting problems as the real cause of the 2000 election debacle.
The voting problems that we all witnessed for 36 very long days 2 years ago.
Let's look back at what really caused the 2000 election debacle in Florida. The media knowingly and falsely reported that the polls in Florida's central time zone were closed when they were in fact open. More than 1 week before the November 7, 2000 presidential election, Florida's Secretary of State issued a written statement to all national, state, and local media outlets. The statement informed all media that the polls in Florida did not close until 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Specifically, the Florida Secretary of State's news release said the following. Secretary of State Katherine Harris today requested the media to delay predictions of the outcome of elections until after 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Secretary wants all Floridians' votes to be cast prior to predictions of the winners of races. The Secretary concluded, the last thing we need is to have our citizens in the central time zone think their vote doesn't count, because it certainly does. On election night 2000, the following aired from 6 p.m. until 7 p.m. Central Time, when 361 Florida Panhandle polling places were still open.
We now go to our election headquarters in Atlanta, where it's 7 p.m. in the east. Polls have just closed in Florida, New Hampshire, and Virginia.
All right, folks, we're coming up right now at 7 o'clock, and we are in a position to project a number of races. We're looking at the state of Florida, where the polls have closed. That race remains too close to call. Florida Senate race, we project the Democrat Bill Nelson to win over the Congressman McCollum, the Republican.
The polls just closed in 6 states with 66 electoral votes, including Florida's Big 25, but no call yet in what both campaigns say may be the key to this election, Florida.
And now the polls have closed in 6 more states. So first, in Florida, in the presidential race in Florida, we simply believe it is too close to call.
Polls have just now closed in 6 additional states, representing 66 electoral votes. Let's take you through them now. Look at this. States that are too close to call, even though the polls have closed now. Here we are in Georgia with 13 electoral votes, New Hampshire with 4, and the big prize, the brass ring for this evening, to start everything off, the state of Florida.
At 7 o'clock, the polls have closed in certain states, and CNN is looking at what is going on in Florida.
Also just closed their polls, but the races are too close to call. Look at this Florida 25. States in white, these are the states where the polls have closed, but where it's too early to make a call. Florida, the big one.
The Democrats were hoping to take advantage of some of the new people who have moved into Florida and to pick up maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 Republican-held seats in Florida. We don't know the results there, even though the polls are closed.
It's also not true that turnout has been going down steadily over the last few years. And in some of the places in Florida, in the exit polls we've looked at so far, we don't see necessarily a vigorous turnout by young people, for example, but we do see many young people in that exit poll going for Mr. Gore.
Hold the phone. All these states in gray here, all of these states are places where the polls are still open. That includes Pennsylvania with 23 big electoral votes, where the polls have closed but no decision is in yet. Florida with 25 electoral college votes.
Some Senate calls to make. First, in Florida, Bill Nelson, the state insurance commissioner, has beaten Congressman Bill McCollum.
The Democrats seem to be doing well in Florida. We've called the Senate race for the Democratic candidate there. So these are very important seats to the Democrats. The polls are closed.
And right now, the polls have just closed in 3 more states.
This is how our electoral map looks at 7:34 Eastern Time.
Look at the way seniors are voting. They're almost splitting 50-50 between Gore and Bush. Bush has a narrow edge.
They represent today 25% of the voters in Florida. That is quite large. How did they vote? Let's take a look.
The polls are closed, but no results, definitive results are in. In Florida, 25 electoral votes. But we states out here marked in gray on our CBS map. In all of those states, the polls are still open. And if you haven't voted and you're eligible to vote in one of these states, we urge you to go vote, then come back and look at what over the 50-year history has been the most accurate presidential election night coverage, and that's on CBS. Where Social Security seemed to cut so heavily in favor of the Democrats in picking up this Senate seat in Florida, with the polls closed, I want to emphasize to you now that the polls are closed in Florida. I want you to know, keep emphasizing it, Florida, the polls have closed. Let me show you the Electoral College map. Florida, the polls have closed, no decision yet. Florida goes for Al Gore. Now, folks, the equation changes. CBS News estimates when all the votes are in and counted, the Sunshine State will have plenty of sunshine for Al Gore. We would rather be last in reporting return than to be wrong. And again, our record demonstrates that true. If you hear someplace else that somebody's carried a state and you're off, as you shouldn't be, watching them, then come back here, because if we say somebody's carried a state, you can pretty much take it to the bank, book it, that that's true.
What